What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're doing Case 1 departure and Case 1 recovery of the USS Nimitz class carrier Theodore Roosevelt with a little bit of maneuvering overhead the ship, where I'm going to be talking about and demonstrating full force feedback in the F-18 Hornet. Now, a lot of you are probably getting a little bit bored or maybe even a little bit annoyed at the fact that I'm constantly banging on about force feedback and I'm constantly making videos about force feedback. But trust me, this has just been so transformational once I've tuned the F-18 right, which has only happened recently. My God, what a difference. Now, a lot of you would have probably watched my previous video about my FFBeast Full Force Feedback joystick based review. If you haven't, please feel free to check it out right now. It will be linked in the top right hand corner, where I have specifically mentioned the fact that the F-18 and the Mirage 2000, basically the fly-by-wire jets, don't really get transformed as much with full force feedback, and that the reason for that is just the fact that they're not as interesting in terms of their stick displacements. You know, they're more linear. The airflow doesn't really affect them. The stick forces don't really become heavier with airflow, and also the stick doesn't really displace with trim. When you trim up, down, left, right, the stick stays in the same position. Doesn't give you that actual feedback of what's happening with the jet, unlike the MiG-29, the F-5, which have become some of my favorite jets to fly now. The F-18 hasn't really done it for me. I didn't really love it that much. It was always a lot better than using a normal spring-loaded joystick. You always felt like you had real hydraulics, and you felt like, you know, you had the vibrations and everything through the stick, which was amazing with force feedback, of course, but it just didn't feel quite as transformational. However, it has recently come to my attention that my settings were a little bit off. The stick forces in the F-18 are a lot heavier than you might imagine. They're not super heavy, but they're definitely heavier than what I had. And ironically, the MiG-29, which is quite lethargic, rolls quite slowly, it's got very light stick forces, whereas the F-18 doesn't have particularly light stick forces. You'll see a very good demonstration of that right now, because you'll see me wipe out the flight controls. And if you've ever wondered why some Navy pilots use two hands to wipe out the flight controls, you'll see right now as we set max or mil power, wipe out the flight controls with two hands. And the reason for that is simply because the stick forces are heavy enough whereby to the right of your wrist, it's not that light. It's a lot easier to reach all four corners when you use two hands. It's not necessary, but it is. Some pilots do it just for that very reason. So I've increased the stick forces now as well, and that's how it feels. It feels absolutely phenomenal. So as we do a Case 1 departure now, we'll get overhead the ship, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how the F-18 now has been transformed with heavier stick forces, which I believe are a lot closer to reality.
We have 2 good engine starts. You're clear to disconnect the headset. We'll see you on the left with the pin. Thanks a lot.
Alright, so there's a little bit of a gap here in the clouds just above the carrier, and you know, immediately the most amazing thing about flying a Hornet with a full force feedback flight control system such as FFBeast that I have is just how utterly incredible it feels to maneuver. Just in general, when you're flying around, you really have that feeling of flying a real jet, and you really, I mean, this doesn't feel like a spring inside a regular joystick. This feels like a serious piece of machinery that you are, you know, manhandling effectively. And I have heard of Hornet pilots saying before that for some maneuvers he actually uses two hands, and just the reason being is that it's same as the wipe out of the flight controls. You know, the stick forces, they are, you know, a little bit heavy at times. Although you can manage with one hand, it does make it a lot easier with two hands. So one thing I have to say with regards to the Hornet, although there has been a total overhaul of the flight control system recently, it still doesn't feel as sharp in roll. There's still a little bit of residual roll. that I think, you know, the real aircraft don't have, looking at all the videos and all the demos. So you see, when I do my 4-point turns, I actually bang the stick slightly in the opposite direction to stop that roll and make it sharp. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be that way. If you do it like normal, like this, you see it's a little bit lethargic, the way it wants to just keep rolling a little bit after I center the stick. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I really have a funny feeling that I'm not wrong in that sense. So the other thing is that we could try to do, it just feels incredible, these vibrations in the stick now. Unfortunately, the real jet has higher stick forces when the AOA is above 22 degrees, but unfortunately that information just isn't coming from Eagle Dynamics, so there's not much we can do about that. Now, entering for the pirouette, 320 knots, pull back, kick the rudder now, and full back stick, and there we go, the famous Hornet pirouette. Now, I actually think the real Hornet has a little bit more authority in yaw, and if you look at the finished demos especially, you know, you can tell just how much more yaw rate they have compared to the one that we have in DCS. And I have tried a whole bunch of different things, and it just does not work out the same way. We just don't have the same yaw, unfortunately. And I do wish, you know, that the stick forces did get progressively heavier as we get above 22 AOA. Nonetheless, it still feels absolutely phenomenal, and like I say, just flying around, it feels like a real jet. Really, just it's a sensational feeling that I absolutely cannot describe. Right, let's come in for a Case 1 recovery and land on the carrier. So here we are, 800 feet, 350 knots, and I give myself a little bit of room for this Case 1 recovery. As you all know, usually I like to do the shit hot carrier breaks at 500, 600 knots, but today we're just doing a standard one. Give myself a little bit of room, come in for a slightly wider circuit. I haven't done one of these in a long time. And even just flying around the circuit with these higher stick forces, it just, all these little movements and stuff become so much more, well, A, realistic feeling, but B, just feels like that little bit of pressure gives you a little bit more precision. I know it's kind of a very difficult concept to describe. You would imagine that maybe having very light stick forces gives you more precision, but actually I find in this particular case it's the opposite with a highly stable aircraft such as the F-18 when it's coming into land. Now you'll also notice that I am using a mod for the textures of the carrier deck. They're a lot heavier. By the way, if anybody wants to tell me what that beeping noise for the warning there is constantly, I'm actually not sure why it was beeping, because I don't think it wasn't bingo fuel, and everything was in landing configuration. I really don't know. Somebody can explain to me, because I haven't flown the F-18 quite a long time, so I'm not entirely sure of what was going on there. But I am using some darker and less glossy textures for the supercarrier deck. There's a mod, I'll link it in the description below. I think it makes it look far, far more realistic. I'm very, very confused as to why the default carrier deck was always so light and glossy. It never really made much sense to me. So this one, looking at the real photos of the real decks, looks considerably more realistic, and I'm not sure why I haven't even been using it before, to be honest. But with that said, I hope you enjoy this trap, and if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe for some future videos, and comment down below, tell me what you think. Tell me what aircraft you would like to see analyzed next with the full force feedback stick. And just in case you're wondering why there's no comms here, is because the flight deck crew think it should be a Case 3 recovery, but of course we can get away with a Case 1 here, no problem. But yeah, comment down below to tell me what aircraft you like to see analyzed. I know a lot of you probably would be quite keen on the F-14. The F4 is something I haven't pre-ordered, so I can't wait to check that out. I've already heard Heebler talk about the fact that the F4 is going to be best enjoyed with a force feedback system, so I hope they've been working hard on it, and I hope they've really managed to put in a lot of detail into the force feedback, because as I've mentioned before, one of the gripes that I have right now is that it's a little bit of a black art. One, we don't really necessarily know what each aircraft needs to feel like, and we need to tune these sticks ourselves unless all the information is coming directly from the simulator. But as is often the case with the F-18 included, although you may have some portion of the force feedback information coming through. You don't have everything, and the F-18, especially with that lack of 22 degrees AOA, a higher stick force is a good example. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.